Welcome back to the Armchair Attorney podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Leffler, the Armchair Attorney, a real-life lawyer, an adjunct law professor, and somebody who loves to understand how things move. How do those things get to your doorstep? How does all that stuff end up on a shelf? Chances are it came on a truck. Everything comes on a truck, or at least that's what I understand to be true, and that's what I've experienced in my own life. Now, I have a treat for you today because so often we hear from the folks that are the brokers or the technologists or the lawyers, but what about the equipment? You know, I love trailers. Oh, I do love trailers. I like those powered assets too, the trucks, the things that pull the trailer. Oh, but where do you go to learn about the trucks and trailers that move America? Well, none other than my very special guest who will be joining us here in just a moment, Dean Vicha, the president of NationaLease, one of the largest heavy-duty equipment leasing companies in the United States. And they maintain those pieces of equipment over 1,000 rooftops across the beautiful country of ours. If you have a truck, you have a trailer, might have come from NationaLease. We'll talk to Dean in just a moment, but we have some great shout outs to give to the companies that help make all of this possible. Of course, to our good friends over at DAT, right over there. There they are. Dial a Truck. Since 1978, DAT has been helping people discover more freight. They are everywhere, ubiquitous in the supply chain for brokers, for motor carriers, and increasingly for shippers. The technologies that help you understand how to navigate your supply chains. It's not just spots and contracts, it's everything in between. Outgo, freight factoring, Convoy, the platform that is trusted by shippers and truckers everywhere. Oh, DAT's got some cool stuff. And if you're new to DAT, there's a link in the show notes. Click that link and you can save yourself 10% off the first 12 months. That's a savings for you. And of course, big shout out to our friends over at GenLogs. GenLogs, you've heard the news. As of just a couple of days ago, GenLogs has raised a Series B fund. We'll talk with Ryan Joyce about that coming up. $60 million. That's a good bit of dollars out there. So we are excited to dive into today's conversation. Let's put this on hold. My next guest is a friend of mine and actually someone who's not terribly far away from where I call home. My good friend, Dean Vicha. Dean, how are you?
Good, Matt. How you doing this morning?
I'm living the dream. The kids are in school. The twins are still here, but half of them are in school. And that's a great development for me.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's cold. People starting to get cabin fever, right? So you need your separation a little bit.
You got to get out there. This is the best weather. I did a smoked beef brisket yesterday. Started at like 8 o'clock in the morning, got done around like 8 o'clock at night. It was a great day. It was a great day.
Awesome. Love it.
Now, for people who don't know who you are you and what do you do?
Yeah, well, you know, as you said, Dean Vicha, I'm president of NationaLease. We're in the truck rental, leasing, and dedicated logistics business. I always say we're kind of the Ace Hardware of the truck rental leasing business, right? We compete with Ryder and Penske every day, Ideal Lease and Pack Lease from the OEM-owned leasing companies, but we're made up of just over 100 family-run truck rental leasing companies throughout the United States and Canada. You know, just like the Ace Hardware business model, right? We combine the resources of the group to put together a network, and it allows family-run businesses to compete with the big box stores. So
this is incredible because I've known about NationaLease because I'm in the Chicagoland area, so I'm familiar with the location. But how many pieces of power are part of like what is inside a NationaLease?
Yeah, altogether we've got just over 100,000 trucks and about 85,000 trailers on the road. So you know, you don't necessarily always see our name. You got to look hard. There's a little sticker on the side of the truck that's got the NationaLease emblem on it. But for the most part, you'll see our customers' names on the trucks, and those you see every day. It's Walgreens, it's Mondelez, it's it's the Chicago Tribune, the New York Daily News.
So a lot of the customers for NationaLease tend to be private fleets, is that right? Or do you have a decent amount of like the for hires that are in the space?
No, we certainly do, and the for hire part of it is growing. Certainly DHL is one of our largest.
I've heard of them.
We do business with JB Hunt, but our core customer is a private fleet. It's a company that I'd say transportation is kind of a necessary evil. It's not what they do. But they really want to have control over their fleet. They want to have their name on the side of the truck. They want to have their drivers interacting with their customers, and quite frankly, our typical customer has some really strict delivery requirements, either for a competitive issue or they might have a product that has a short shelf life, right? So food and beverage and believe it or not, steel. Is newspapers, you name it, right? Those are the folks that we really that really kind of gravitate towards the to full service leasing.
And when you talk about, like, when you first described full service leasing to me, and I've always had an idea, like someone wants to have access to something, but they don't want to deal with all of the pieces of procuring it and maintaining it and selling it when it's done. But you kind of characterize it as like, you're one of the largest manufacturers of used equipment in the country. What does that mean? Tell me about like what you're doing for your customers from procurement all the way to the end of life cycle.
Well, you named it. So depending on some estimates, right? Maybe 50% of the private fleets today are leasing their trucks from somebody like us, right? So as their name on the truck, but they're outsourcing, the acquisition of the asset. And the maintenance of that asset, over its life, while they're using it to folks like us. And when I say we manufacture used trucks, it's because that's a big part of our business, of how we make money, quite frankly. When somebody I say, if we were a manufacturing company, we buy new trucks, we run them for 5 or 6 years, we turn them into used trucks and we sell them. That's what we make, right? So, hopefully we're making some money during the term of the lease, but we're also hoping to make some money. Part of our business model is making money at the end of the lease.
Well, it's interesting because, like, when you talk about commercial vehicles and when it costs to run a trucking company, besides fuel and labor, the asset itself and then the maintenance of that asset are the biggest things people spend money on. So if your core competency is not maintaining equipment, this is like a good, reasonable way to kind of get into like, hey, here's the asset, and we can go with a partner like NationaLease who can maintain this thing across the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it, right? I mean, if you look at our typical customer, again, I still remember one time at the Chicago Tribune walking down and watching the newspapers go down the line, and I asked them why they were doing business with us, and he said, "Hey, look, this newspaper is out of date right now, quite frankly, right? And if it's not on your porch at 5:30 or 6 in the morning when you get up, then we have no value, and you have no value for us, right? So hey, it's in all likelihood, that business is getting tougher and tougher to compete in. When you go to a 7-Eleven, you want, those donuts in there, believe it or not, they're fresh, from the night before. They're great. And that those donuts need to be there at 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. The buns at a Burger King need to be there, and they can't show up at noon, right?
That's right.
They got to be fresh. And so those are the folks that really do a lot of business and look at truck leasing. We buy the truck better than they do. That used truck value is huge because it's part of our value proposition to the customer. They're not going to have to depreciate, I'll just use, $130,000 vehicle down to zero. We're going to give them credit for what we think we're going to be able to sell that truck for 5-6 years down the road. And so instead of paying all that, they've only got to pay a portion of it, and we'll take on the rest. But boy, we better get that used truck right, because we better sell it for a couple bucks more than we have it on our books for. So
that's the key. Is like that residual value of the equipment is so important for diesel and for trailers. And we'll talk about the alternative power fuel trains in a moment. But like it's this part where you have this scale that no one else really does. How many trucks do you, as NationaLease, does you buy in a typical year?
Well, you know what, Matt? There hasn't been a typical year since COVID, right?
Right.
There's been all these different things. So, I mean, heck, transportation, I don't care what side of it you're on. transportation's an EKG report, right? It never goes like this.
It never stops, but it has a little
never
slowdown.
stops. If it stops, we all got a big problem.
That's
right. It almost did once, for a little bit, for a couple of days anyway.
Yeah.
But so it changes. So, hey, in a perfect year, we would probably like to replace 16-17% of our fleet, right?
Okay.
Maybe if you look at a 6 or 7 year, fleet replacement cycle. So you have like a certain amount of your trucks are being replaced and a certain amount are new every year. So you have some good fleet planning. We work on that with our customers all the time, as well, right? You don't want all your trucks being the same age, coming out the same year and renewing. And you want to spread out your costs. You want to spread out how they operate, to that a little bit. So, that's a long-winded way of saying, hey, in a perfect year, we probably do 15,000 trucks a year.
That's madness. That's madness.
As a group, but that certainly depends on a lot of factors. And
what about the trailer world? Because I love trailers. How many trailers is NationaLease buying every year?
Yeah, so that depends. I mean, hey, if you've got 85,000, I'd say I'd probably use an average time of so maybe 8,500 a year. Maybe like a 10-year term. A lot of things depend on what's the operation. Hey, a refrigerated trailer we're probably not going to hang on to as long as a dry van.
But you're buying a mega fleet every year. I mean, this is the part that's so interesting, is like the scale that NationaLease operates. You're talking 10 to 12,000 trucks or 8 to 10,000 trailers every single year. That's madness. That's madness.
Yeah. Hey, it's truck leasing companies. Hey, if I can talk about the industry for a second, right? I think we probably do as good a job as anybody putting new equipment on the streets, between what we do and what our competitors do. Our customers want the newest, safest, most cost-effective equipment that they can have, right? So we're not in the business of really, leasing used vehicles. We're going to lease a new vehicle, give it to a customer when they run it. Then we're going to go put it out on the used truck market and replace that with something new. And quite frankly, for the communities and the environment, it's great. It's safer, it's cleaner, and all those good things, and it keeps the economy going, right? And it keeps those boxes getting delivered to your front porch every day. Right?
I don't know how they get there. I just need them to be there. That's the critical thing.
Yeah.
Well, when we think about like I just saw a bird just crash into my window. It was really exciting. I'm watching the livestock in our neighborhood. It's amazing.
It's not that warm yet, Matt.
No, it was very peculiar. All right, let me segue for a second, because you talk about the new trucks, and everything that I have heard and read again and again and again is the idea of this electrification. We're going to take all the big diesel. It's all going to go to electric. I understand they're heavier. I understand they cost more. So is it going to be tomorrow that they're all electric, or when's the timeline for everything being electric, Dean?
Yeah. It's going to be a ways down the road.
Explain some of the problems with that. I'd love to get, what are your thoughts? How does this?
There's a couple of things, right? And I'm going to stay away from the politics of everything, that go into, but that certainly plays a big part, in and what's going on. So certainly this administration has pulled back, from some of the regulation that was coming, that was in there before. And quite frankly, that prior regulation was, really the infrastructure, the costing, hadn't kept up with how fast, we were trying to accomplish some things.
That's right.
And the industry's 100%. We're 100% behind it. We would love a zero emission vehicle. The cleaner, the better, right? But certainly cost and operations and infrastructure matter too. And so a lot of things have to come together to take on a really bold initiative, like that.
Well, and you gave me an idea. Like in California, you had a customer deploy 10 or 15 electric trucks, and the entire infrastructure just for that location had to be modified. What does someone have to think about if they really want to try this technology? What are the things you have to kind of consider as you build it out?
We're all in business, right? So you better think about cost. And there's a significant cost that comes with that, right? And certainly, especially in California and some other places, different states were willing to help absorb some of that cost more than others. But no matter where you went, your costs were going to increase, for the most part, especially in an initial investment, right? And that investment then could also be in building the charging capabilities at the location, right? You can't take a truck and go down the street and pull into a Pilot Flying J or whatever, fill it up in 15 minutes. Driver goes in, gets a big gulp, whatever, comes back out and gets in the truck and hits the road. Takes a lot more time. There's only so many places available to do it. And so you get into all these challenges up to and including the fact that the electric truck doesn't go as far, as a diesel truck. So, hey, maybe what you used to be able to do with 10 trucks, now you need 11, to do those things. Not to mention the increase in the cost. And the big thing that I think that a lot of people missed, we would talk to it about it with our customers. We did it. We run some today. The residual value.
Yeah.
What's that truck going to be worth at the end of the term? And any mature company is going to pay a lot of attention when they do their cost benefit analysis, or to looking what that is. So we don't really know what the market's going to be. It's kind of, what the market and what that value of that truck's going to be. That quite frankly came in, costing more, but you would have to really invest in your facility as well, right? In the shop, retraining your mechanics to work, to being able to work on these trucks. They also have different safety items that you got to be, definitely got to be aware of. And by the way, you probably got to rip up your lot and everything to be able to get the electricity into your place to charge them. And we haven't even talked yet about a grid that's outdated and over, and quite frankly, being overused already.
That's the part I think is so incredible to keep people honest with this technology. Is does it just promise some new uses for sure, but it's a higher weight vehicle, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 pounds more than a typical diesel. They're 2 to 3 times more expensive just buying the thing itself. And then you have this challenge you've outlined, which is the infrastructure. Most companies do not have the capability to just have plug-in trucks. It's different than an electric car. It's a different type of charger. So even if you could get all this stuff aligned, most of the power we have does not come from renewables. Most of the power is from hydrocarbons. So you're still going to use the other fuel sources. So maybe it's not tomorrow. Do we have an idea of when we might see them? What are the great use cases for the technology today? Is it P&D fleets? Is it local delivery? What is the good use case?
Yeah, you can certainly do it, but you still have a humongous infrastructure problem.
Yeah.
Again, right? And you got AI that everybody's all excited about. Well,
we love the robots.
Same place, right? And a lot of these things, and we've already got places with where that are struggling to keep up with what the needs are of the community. And by the way, it's the middle of winter here in Chicago, right? My electric bill is through the roof, and so is my gas bill. Do you want to see, how much more do people want to see that go up? Somebody's going to have to pay for it at some point. And this all sounds great. It is great. It's a great goal to have. I don't know if that's going to eventually be some kind of a technology is going to win out, and there's going to be a change. But I think it's going to be further down. I think we're further down the road than most people think before we can actually make that full commitment where it's not 10-20% of the fleets out there, it's 100%, right? Which is the initial goal, or not the initial goal, but that's the vision, right?
And we still need a ton of rare earth minerals in order for that to even be practical at scale. So there's a lot of other things further off, but a newer technology that might be here sooner than later is this autonomous technology. Whether it's Gatic or Aurora or Kodiak. I've seen a lot of these things. Are you starting to see those in your neck of the woods? Yeah.
I mean, for sure. And I've been in it. It's fun, right? It's certainly Star Wars for trucks. And I do think that there's certainly applications. I mean, heck, there's applications where they're being used today, right?
That's right.
For sure. Heck, I just, it wasn't too long ago, I was in Los Angeles going back to the airport in my Uber, and had the Waymo car next to me, right? And
Right.
that's, I still like, had to do a double take. All right, I think that's probably the first time I actually saw it in use. And not just, not on a test track where I've gotten into these things in the past. So, I really think there are, right? I've always said I could envision a day. I don't know if that's how it'll be, right? Where, I don't know, our interstates have a separate lane that from 11 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning, from St. Louis to Chicago, this lane is for, autonomous trucks. And you have just this whole convoy of trucks coming together, pulling off into some place around Joliet, Illinois, and dropping off at some place and then getting put on trucks with people to make deliveries, throughout the Chicagoland area the next day. I can certainly see it coming. We got a lot of stuff to work through though, right? I mean, there was just a Waymo accident this week, with a car hitting a little girl at a school somewhere. Hey, that happens all the time with human drivers, right? But people tend to react a little bit different right now. They tend to have that reaction that I did. And so when it comes into regulation and the things that would need to happen, and there would have to be some infrastructure changes, as well. I think it's great. I think it's really cool. I think it could solve some problems down the road. I think it would cost a lot of money to make the investment, and not to say that we shouldn't be doing it and looking into it, and furthering what those capabilities are. I think it's a little bit further down the road than maybe you hear in some other places.
It's interesting because I think, like, to your point, like, we're starting to see these things on the road, like whether it's the trucks themselves, which are running maybe intrastate or off highway. We see the Waymos, whether you're in Arizona,
out west and southwest. Yep.
Absolutely. So like we're starting to see these things happening, and then the government has started to come out with some proposed legislation on like some levels of autonomy. And so I feel like if the technology is there and we're just waiting on the regulations, once the regulations happen, presumably we start seeing a shift. And I really do feel this might be one of those changes as significant as containerization was, and maybe as significant as deregulation, as we're changing an aspect of this business that hadn't ever had displaced drivers, but this will be something. And maybe people want to borrow that asset as opposed to own it. So maybe the leasing world benefits from the autonomous evolution.
So much of that is psychology too based, right? And I think, to your point, I think, especially with that one, as new generations come in and take leadership roles, I think they'll be way more open to somebody who's becoming like my age and going, "Oh, that sounds really cool, but I kind of like having that driver."
It's nice to have someone who can take over.
I know how the airplane works. I like seeing that pilot who looks experienced sitting there, when I hop on an airplane.
Absolutely.
But, there's a lot of things to think about. Hey, that would rock the insurance industry, right? I mean, how are you going to insure these trucks now? And what is it going to be? And is it a revenue? How much revenue, could that potentially take? I mean, there's, and which legislatures are going to actually go behind it, when they have maybe a union, in their town that is not as big of a lot of different things that sometimes, that we've got to really think about before we say, hey, this thing is really ready to go, right? But it's kind of cool that we're getting there because, we've got other competing countries and whatever that are looking at it too. So you gotta, there's a lot that make up the real big picture.
And we've been talking about autonomous trucks for a decade. So like we've been promised they're going to be here tomorrow. And I'm wondering, so when did you get into the business? What brought you into transportation in the first place?
It depends on how you want to look at it. Officially, my first job when I was in college, I drove a meat truck for the LaRocco Meat Company in Chicago. So that's when I got my first taste. It wasn't a quote unquote planned internship for a career in transportation. It was to make some bucks, and it was a great job. I loved it. Still might be my favorite job I ever had.
Really? What did you love about it?
I really enjoyed it. Boy, I loved the freedom of being in the truck, right? I mean, not that many 19-year-olds having a job where you get into it and hey, you go into the shop, take your orders, you load your truck up, go down to the market, buy whatever it is you don't have, and then go out. And then I loved meeting the different restaurant owners and the chefs and the places, and going to a different spot while I was on my own without, most of my friends had a job with some taskmaster, telling them what to do and hammering them. So I loved it, but I also really learned a lot about business, way more than any class I ever took. And there's some great stories I probably don't want to share here. It was an Italian meat company, in that industry and at the market. But I really learned a lot at that job, and I had a lot of fun doing it. I just knew I didn't want to be hauling boxes of French fries up three sets of stairs while I'm double parked, somewhere in Chicago, for the rest of my life. So, after I graduated school, ended up really just having a buddy of mine who I went to school with, who had gotten a job at a company called Rollins Truck Rental and Leasing, and he told me, "Hey, you'd probably like this, and it's a good company, good job. It had insurance that was important to my parents.
That's important. That's good.
Yeah. And so I took a job in 1993, February. Well, actually, you want to know what? It would have been February 1st of 1993.
Look at us go! Look at us go!
About that. History. And so just an anniversary. And I started working a rental desk for Rollins Truck Rental Leasing in Cicero, Illinois.
Okay.
I thought I'd do it for a couple of years and then get back into the sports industry, which is what I really wanted to do. After they told me I wasn't good enough to play, my plan was to work in there. And then they told me to go get some experience and then come back. I had some really good contacts with the Chicago White Sox at the time to go work there. And I got into truck leasing, and one thing led to another, and what are we now? So
could you go back and announce games? Is that what you were looking to do? And on the sports side,
I was, hey boy, I had a lot of big dreams when I was that age, right? And how smart I was. I just really wanted to be around sports, and I wanted to be, I really missed it. I still miss it, but I still get those same things, right? What I found is that being a part of a team, competing, all that stuff translates to business, and I absolutely love that. I mean, still the same things I learned: preparation, scouting, knowing your opponent, competing, wanting to win. There's nothing more than I love on a Friday afternoon knowing we got a deal. Nothing more I hate on a Friday afternoon than we lost a deal. And those things, and you do the same things that you did in sports. So I found I could actually get the same things in the business world that I was getting in sports. So I just never, quite frankly, I just never went back.
Yeah, I felt like I loved sports when I was athletic many years ago.
Yeah,
you can scratch that. You can
rumor
scratch
has that you're a pretty good athlete. Yeah,
the rumors they're exactly what they are. They're all rumors. There's maybe some small bits of evidence here and there.
Yeah.
But I love to think back to those times, when you would put the work in and you would perform and it would come out to be a good result. So whether you're going into a pitch meeting or you're talking with your team internally about whether you're working on a deal or something, there is something that when you do that kind of sacrifice with a group of people, it carries over. And there's a lot of lessons that transfer into the business world.
Hey, it's so great. I'm watching my daughter do it right now. And I couldn't be prouder of her. She's in the business world, different business, but she was a soccer player and track athlete and played around other sports. And there's certain fundamentals in life that just carry over, right? Do the right thing, work hard, prepare, healthy competition. Is great, and personal responsibility, and then it builds confidence, and you can look back the same days I failed, and I do believe in failure. Unlike I think that's I'm in the minority now, but I always thought failure is not death, right? But a loss is a failure. You went to go play that game to win, and you lost, and so you go back and you figure out why and what's right. And then you go back and you try and improve on that, and hopefully the next time you line it up against those guys, you get the win. and that feels way better than the loss. But the same things, right? The days hey boy, we've both gotten up and spoken in front of people, right? We've both given proposals, and we both fought for business. And boy, the times you really prepared well and you were ready to do it, and the times that maybe you weren't.
That's right.
How did that work out? Once in a while you get away with it, but you can only do that so much. So yeah, the same things you learn in school, being a part of a team, they translate, right?
The challenge for me is like I was a track runner too, Dean. I loved running in ovals, and for me, it was the best. It was the best. But my problem is that if I didn't throw up at the end of the race, I was mad at myself because I know I could have worked harder. I know I could have tried more. It's my fault that I'm not sick. That doesn't translate into being an adult now. Like I don't work as hard as I can till I vomit. That is, I've learned that lesson. Those days are far behind me. But I think your point's really well taken, is that you learn to deal with failure, because life is about different types of failure, and you learn more from failing than you do from succeeding, at least for me. And so it's interesting you found this pathway into the leasing space, because it is a hyper competitive industry. You mentioned before your biggest competitors are Ryder and Penske, and these are not mom and pops, but you're out there fighting with the best and the biggest, and you're winning in cases where you might not have won before. So that's got to be really exciting for you.
No, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to build, right? I love watching our customer list get bigger. That motivates me every day. I love hiring people, and not just to replace somebody, to grow. That's a lot of fun for me. When somebody goes home and gets to tell, I'm going to make an offer to somebody here on Wednesday, and look forward to it. And I always kind of envision them going home and telling their family, hey, I got this, right? And let's go out to dinner and let's celebrate it. Mom or dad, got this opportunity, and it's going to allow us as a family to do other things, to do bigger things, right? Consequently, when things get hard, I hate somebody having to be let go, because of it too, because somebody, in some cases, because of nothing wrong that they did, especially when I think about mechanics and drivers and different folks out there, where we really have some ratios and say, this is how many trucks we need to have this many mechanics in a shop, right? When you tell that person that maybe you have to downsize, I don't know if there's anything worse in this place about feeling. But I remember when I was in my sales roles, and I had a prior mentor who used to talk about that all the time, right? Hey, put in, I think the number was 75 trucks, we're going to hire somebody. We lose 75 trucks, we're going to lose somebody. That always stuck with me, pretty hard. And there's nothing worse than somebody having to go home and maybe tell their family, we can't do this now because I've got to go find a job, because I lost a job because of nothing, that's something that had nothing to do with anything that they did wrong, right? So.
But that's one of the things, at least on the supply chain, is that it is so fast. Like the recoveries are usually fast. The downsides are usually pretty quick. And there's always something for someone to do in this industry. And
it's like you said, I think I'm a big believer in conservative growth. It's like we talked about a little bit, this industry is an EKG report. Right. So you can't get too high with the highs, and you can't get too low with the lows. Really managing yourself, in a conservative method for conservative growth. I think those are the companies that stick around, that make it through the boom and bust cycle that hey, quite frankly, we're in right now, right?
This has been one of the longest freight recessions we've seen in decades, and people are living this every day. We see some capacity moving a little bit. We see some stronger enforcer regulations, but it's a tough time. And great companies will survive, but great companies may not survive. So what are you seeing your customers doing that's right in this time? Is it deferring maintenance? Is it staying on top of your maintenance? What's the recipe for people who got a lot of assets right now?
Yeah, deferring maintenance will never pay off for you.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, but some people do it. We won't do it. It's too important that our customer be able to deliver. We have to deliver on our promise to our customers that they get uninterrupted transportation 365 days a year. That's why we exist.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, what they might do is they might hold off, and we see right now maybe somebody's got 50 trucks that are coming up on lease this year, and they may say, you know what, we're just going to renew 45 of them. We see a lot of merger and acquisition activity going on, right?
That's right.
Certainly, a lot of our customers are being bought by other customers, or our customers are buying other. There's a tremendous amount of activity both there and within our industry, and across the board. So I think a lot of people, especially the ones I talk to now, whether it's customers or other people in the industry, you're right. I mean, the freight world, I've never seen a freight recession this long. I can't remember in my time. Everything just kind of seems to be, nothing's getting worse. It just seems to be kind of bouncing around.
We're kind of stalled out. Yeah, we're just kind of treading water, hoping that something breaks.
Yeah, kind of bouncing on the bottom. So I think, hope is never a good strategy, right? I had somebody tell me that too. I think hope is for Sundays. But on Monday, you want to have something that you can bank on. And then back to that conservative side, I probably said it to you. You go broke in this business by having too many trucks. You don't go broke by not having enough. And so you want to make sure you stay in that kind of a place of not being overfleeted, having too many trucks and not enough freight.
Do you see that for your customers? Like you mentioned this idea of like having too much of a fleet or over fleeting. Do you see customers blend owning and borrowing leasing, or do you see them go like we go all owner or we go all leasing? What's the mix you see the most common?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Matthew. I see both, right? In a time with so much merger and acquisition, right? A company like Performance Food Group or somebody like that, they're buying a different company every month.
That's right.
And so then it's a mix. What are they buying? Were these people in ownership before? Were they in leasing? So I think the bigger guys end up having a mix for a couple of reasons. Don't want to have all their eggs in one basket. I think most people matriculate, especially a private fleet, to one solution or the other. I think some of the carriers, I think that's a big area of growth for the full service truck leasing industry in the future. As these trucks become more expensive, they become more, they require a lot more, from a technology standpoint, and the infrastructure matters, and the network. Network is what really matters.
The network's a great point, because like if you're talking like an Old Dominion, they understand network balancing really, really well, and they own their equipment also. But if you say, hey, I run like 1,000 trucks or I run 500 trucks, like you're new to this balancing of the network to an extent. And your scale with essentially buying 12 to 15,000 trucks a year, you've done this for a minute. So that makes sense why some would say, okay, let's just give Dean this to handle. We'll do what we do, and they'll make sure the assets are working properly.
That's why they do it. They want the most cost-effective way to deliver their product that gives them a competitive advantage, right? That's what their fleets, that's what our customers' fleets are for. And that network is huge. You have to have the network. Not many people have a fleet that only goes within a 25-mile radius, right? So things do go wrong with trucks, right? My dream is that someday our trucks become as like an airplane. Hey, say what we want, but when that airplane goes up, I'm putting a lot of trust that thing's going to go up and it's going to land. I don't know if it's going to be on time all the time. But boy, if our trucks could be that, could that be that reliable, where every time it pulls out of our shop, it goes, makes its deliveries and comes back at night. How great would that be for our drivers who want to go home, safely? How great would that be for our cost and how we, are able to, predict and to maintain in keeping the maintenance of this trucks, and how great would it be for the infrastructure, because some of our trucks are delivering some really important things.
What I love about the talk about maintenance generally, and then just what NationaLease is doing as an offering for their customers, you maintain the truck, because ultimately having good quality maintenance means the residual of that truck is higher. Like a well-maintained asset is worth more than one that's not been maintained. Yeah. If you look at our industry, generally speaking, we are not good at maintenance and repair. I think the national out of service rate for commercial vehicles is like 22% at this moment. So
Yeah.
we see a lot of folks who are running trucks and trailers that maybe don't know what they're doing, or at least they don't know how to maintain them. And I would imagine for your customers, that's not what they experience. They're experiencing trucks and trailers that are maintained at a schedule and fixed when they need to be fixed and running routes every day.
Well, I think, a lot of it gets into, your motivation, and we exist, right? Our industry exists to provide, to maintain trucks better than anybody else. Our customer wants to be able to use the truck. We get paid and we get to keep more money depending on if our truck, we're inclined, we're incentivized to keep that truck on the road. If a truck shows up at a truck rental and leasing facility, unplanned, that's a cost to us. We bear that cost, not the customer. And we give the customer another truck for free from our rental department to go make the deliveries that they got to make that day. And then we pay for that cost unless it's driver abuse. So, basically we get a bucket of money at the start of every month. And as long as that truck is out on the road making deliveries, we get to keep it. Shows up at our shop, we got to pay labor costs. We got to pay parts. We got to pay whatever. We might even give you a second truck for free, depending on how fast we can fix it. Now I've given you 2 trucks for the price of 1, and I could be running that truck at a higher price. The truck goes to a dealership or a garage, right? They ring the cash register.
Absolutely.
And so, and I'm not saying that that's not a good solution for certain, for certain areas, but I think, this one is really incentivized to keep the trucks on the road, and that's what our customer wants. They want to make sure that those muffins that they're delivering, get there on time every time with their name on the side of the truck too. They don't want our rental truck with our name on it.
So as we look ahead, like for 2026, like, are you excited for the rental and leasing industry? Do you see a lot of momentum, or how do you feel going into 26?
Yeah, it was a really tough 25. It's been a tough couple of years for the rental side of the business, the day-to-day rental, week to week, month to month kinds of rentals. It was a really poor Christmas holiday season, which normally should be gangbusters, right? We should be renting every truck that we have. We've all spent some time downsizing that rental fleet over the last couple of years. We're running at manageable utilization rates right now. In first quarter, after the holiday isn't great. I'm really hoping that once the spring comes, that those things should start creeping up. But we planned for a flat year, with maybe a little minimal growth. Hey, long term, I think the truck rental leasing business is I'm incredibly bullish on it.
To build off that, I mean, I think one of the things that I've taken to heart through my years of going to TMC with American Trucking Associations is just how sophisticated the equipment is getting. Even if you don't have autonomous capabilities, you have all this collision avoidance technology, all of these new things that if you don't know how to maintain this stuff, why would you ever own it? Why would you ever want it if you have no idea how to maintain it? So as you look ahead for the leasing space, I think the more sophisticated the stuff gets, the bigger opportunity is for NationaLease to grab that kind of market share.
100%. And we have the infrastructure in place.
That's a critical. How many rooftops do you guys have to maintain?
Just over 1,000 locations in the continental U.S. and Canada. And that's huge, especially if you start thinking down the road. And it would take an incredible capital investment on our part as well, right? But to be able to put together a network that would take care of electric trucks or hybrids or natural gas or whatever it's going to be, or it's you got to have bricks and mortar and those things, and our industry has it. And quite frankly, that's where I go back. I think someday you may see the carriers. We see it a little bit right now, maybe leasing more of their equipment, the equipment that can't get into one of their shops, on a regular basis, or being able to have some kind of a network that says, hey, when our truck is out here, and it's not, close to one of our locations, boy, it'd be great to have a really strong partner, that can take care of that.
And you're not just supporting like over the road trucks. I mean, you're doing yard trucks like hostlers and shunters, and what all like would you guys be able to help your customers?
Hey, Matthew, we'll lease you anything if we can make it.
Sprinter vans, bread trucks.
Yeah, our typical customer, our typical truck is a class 6 through 8 vehicle. Okay. Our typical customer's got 4 to 5 trucks. Our typical customer is probably doing local delivery. It's the produce company out of Chicago. It's it's a newspaper guy in New York or what have you, delivering routes and the driver coming home at night. But we've also got that network across the country because of a lot of our customers, they'll probably even have both, right? And, they've got the guy going Chicago to Kansas City twice a week, and you better have a place because the breakdown doesn't always happen at your shop.
It never happens where you want it to happen. It always happens, and you have a super single. No one's carrying a super single.
And that's why people do business with us. It's to keep the truck on the road.
You've been in the business for a minute now. At what point did you realize like you couldn't escape transportation, or do you think you still could? Maybe.
No, I don't think I still could. I don't want to. I love it in a masochistic kind of way.
There's the chaos. We thrive on this chaos.
Hey, you said it at the beginning, right? Until some other real technology comes up, everything comes on a truck at some point, right? So that's incredibly great. When there's young people talking about what industry they want to get in, we're not the sexiest industry in the world on college campuses anymore, right? But boy, there's a lot of great opportunity, and if you work hard and you do the right things, a young person can do very well in this industry. We're starving for young talent, and across the board there. But it's also good to know that the industry is not going away, right? We're not being replaced by AI. We're not being replaced by other technologies. Now we're changing and we're evolving and things of that nature for sure. But change brings opportunity, right? There's always going to be I'll go back to the sports. There's always going to be a winner and a loser. Especially in this, in this kind of a market. And so then, what that means is there's always great opportunities, and you just want to make sure you're out there, looking at everything and preparing. And I think the one thing when we get into some of the stuff you talked about earlier, I think sometimes maybe we miss the timing. I've got another, mentor of mine that would always say, "Hey, Dean, I don't need to be the first guy at the party." And I've taken that as well, right? I always think about this phone that I can operate my entire life on,
That's right.
I didn't need to be the guy with the first one. It was pretty cool. I remember seeing it. It didn't work.
My first had the walkie-talkie, and that worked really well.
Yeah. So let's some things play out a little bit. Let's make sure that we get the timing right for transitions and things of that nature. But certainly everywhere that everything is going speaks great for the truck rental and leasing business, because it's going to cost a lot. You're gonna have to have a network to take care of it, and you're gonna have to find a good way to dispose of it. And that's the other part that everybody always misses, is how important, if you're in transportation, your disposal strategy is, right?
Absolutely.
And making sure of it, because boy, if you got trucks that are on your books for this amount, and you don't need 20% of them, but the used truck market says that they're worth this, you got a company or something like that. It's the same thing. It's the people in this industry are unique.
Absolutely.
They're great people, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of good challenges, a lot of laughs, a lot of tears, a lot of blood, a lot of sweat, right?
The messy business.
It's a messy business, but my daughter, I mentioned her earlier. She used to work for us in the summer, right? And she would come home, and when she was in college, I don't want to be, I don't want to go there. I don't want to be where my dad's at, and I got bigger and better things I'm going to do. But she came to one of our award meetings last year, that was, right by where she was, and my wife couldn't go, so I asked my daughter if she wanted to come, and she did, and after it, she said, "Boy, Dad," she goes, I really rethink sometimes going into your industry, because it really is a special industry. I mean, the people really care about each other, and it's a lot of good people solving a lot of problems, doing a lot of really good things, right? And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where, that's definitely.
Oh, absolutely, man. Well, for folks who want to learn more about NationaLease or learn more about you, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah. Well, hey, they can certainly they can reach out to me on LinkedIn or something there. I'd love to talk to them. Whether it's about entering the industry, whether it's us, helping them with their transportation needs, what have you. www.nationalease.com is a place they can get together with, and connect with anybody in our organization. And I will promise them this: if they go there and they send something up, a human being will talk to them within 24 hours.
No AI yet over NationaLease for
we have a that's probably another show, right? But we're definitely doing it. We're exploring it. We're trying to figure out where it makes sense and where it doesn't. We are looking at it and we're talking about it every day. But I still think that maybe I'm always looking for our own unfair advantage, and I think part of that is still a person talking to a person.
I think that's the differentiator that will be the still remaining differentiator for a long time to come. But I appreciate you, Dean. I'll put your stuff in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on the podcast today, my friend.
No, thanks for having me, Matt. It's great. Always a lot of fun to talk to you, and I love listening to your podcast, even when it's not me on it.
Well, you are phenomenal, my friend. Thank you for joining us. That is the show, everybody. Dean Vicha, president of NationaLease, one of the largest heavy-duty equipment leasing companies in the country. If you need a truck or you need a trailer or maybe other class 6, 7, 8 commercial vehicles, give my buddy Dean Vicha a call. I'll put his website and his LinkedIn profile. Please message him. He'd love to help you. Thank you again for joining the Armchair Attorney podcast as we continue to have discussions with some of the most interesting and innovative people in the supply web. It never stops. Nothing stops. Freight never stops. May slow down from time to time. Everything comes on a truck, and all we want is to get home in the same condition that we left. Safely delivering freight on time and undamaged is difficult, even under the best circumstances. So if you're going to have to do it, might as well do it in a beautiful truck or trailer from my friends, the folks over at NationaLease. We'll catch you again in the future for another episode of the Armchair Attorney Podcast.